Let's welcome him to the show. I'm excited to have him on the show, man. I heard him and Firestorm go way back.
Dan, long time.
Hey,
buddy.
what's going on? Can you guys hear me all right?
We can
Yes.
hear you great, man. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today, Dan.
Great
How's
to be
everything?
here.
Thanks for joining. I don't know how many shows you do on average, but I kind of wanted to have a friend from a while back before Avalanche was a thing, and obviously you were the first person that came to mind. So welcome to the show. Thanks for accepting our invite. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no
Definitely.
problem. It's great to chat as always.
Of course.
Definitely,
So, just a little background for our audience. Dan is probably the nicest developer that I've ever met. He was the only person that would pick up my dumb questions in the Avalabs Discord in the very early days while I was trying to get my node up on like crazy non-standard things. And like he's always helped me. At one point we became friends, and here we are 2.5 years later, I would say, right? It's been a long time. And look at where Avalanche is. And Dan, what number employee are you? Were you like first 10, or do you know?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it depends like who you count and don't count, but
Sure.
yeah, thereabouts. Early enough that like there wasn't really a product built when I joined, and got woken up a few nights for pages and other stuff, and I remember restarting the test nets and all the stuff from the bad old days.
Yep. So there you have it, guys. Like one of the very, very, like, these are the real OGs, right? These are the guys that actually committed the code for the platform that we all come to love. So maybe with that, our typical question is, tell us how you ended up here. That Jimmy usually asks that. So I'll
Sorry, I had some stuff going on, but yeah, Dan, our listeners and viewers always love to get like background on who we're talking to. You know what I mean? So we know you, but I'd love it if you could, just kind of give your background and how you got involved with Avalabs and just kind of go from there.
Sure, yeah. So I did my undergrad in computer science at Cornell, and I had this like crazy advisor. He was this guy named Emin Gunsur, and I learned about it because of him. So we only met. He only met me in his capacity as advisor once or twice, because he was like, listen, if you have questions about like which classes you need to graduate and fulfill requirements and stuff, I don't really know. Go to the CS office and they'll be able to sort you out. But if you want to talk about like actual computer science stuff or your career or research or whatever else, talk to me. So after I graduated, I took a couple classes with Gun as well. So after I graduated, I was following him on Twitter, and he posted something like, I'm starting this blockchain startup, so come apply, whatever. And I was working at a TradFi company at the time, and I was pretty bored by it. So I thought, hey, that sounds kind of cool. So I applied, and the rest is history. So I've been at Avalabs for like 3.25 years now, which is like 330 years in crypto time or something like that.
Were you there for the first test net?
Yeah.
So you were part of, like, I basically started trying to do stuff on my own at the end of the first test net. Then came Denali, then came Everest, and all the good stuff. It's you're right. It's been like 574 years in crypto time. Honestly, I was at a bank at the time, and I was like, "What is this? I don't believe it. I'm gonna break it." That was like my entry into the whole thing. Like I believe in Günsirer, but I don't know if I believe all these claims. Will this really work? And I tried. Like my entire goal with this thing was to break it. Actually, originally.
Well, I just got to jump in and say that might
started.
be the best background answer we've ever gotten on this show. You know what I mean? Like that, Jonathan Ackerman just said in the chat, haha, amazing story, but he's absolutely right, man. That's such a great like origin story. I like to consider it like your superhero origin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few early people at Avalabs with pretty much the same story, where like we had some connection to Goon
Sure.
from like the CS department at Cornell. So I would say there's probably like at least half a dozen people who started pretty much the same way for the same reason.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I shouldn't hit him up about my course load and what courses I need. Shouldn't even bother them, right? I shouldn't
slide into my DMs. I'll sort you out.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, got you.
So I mean, that's a great story. So you've really observed not just the blockchain's evolution, but also the evolution of the company. Do you mind just giving us a little bit about what your role is? You're obviously one of the senior developers on the team. I think, you know, the original context that I talked to you about was the Node software, but I imagine your responsibilities have changed since then. Do you mind just walking us through what you do day to day? I think it's quite interesting for people to hear a little bit about the guys that are truly behind the tech.
Definitely.
Sure. So it's changed a bunch over time. Like we said, like when I joined, it was a very, very small company. So, you know, a lot of people wore a lot of hats. So we started and I was working on Avalanche Go. You know, at that time it was called something else, but what became Avalanche Go. And at that time it was just all focused on like, let's get something that works built, you know, let's get a piece of software that actually, you know, runs, and then let's get a piece of software that runs and then can actually do networking and send messages to another node on the same machine, and then to another node on a different machine, and so on and so on. So that's mostly what I've worked on at Avalabs. I've also worn a bunch of other hats. Like I wrote a lot of our technical documentation, so you're welcome, but mostly sorry for that because I am not a technical writer. I'm not even a guy who took any like writing classes in high school or college. So I wrote them because at the time it was like, well, either I have to write it or Steven's got to write it, and Steven's got much better stuff to do. So I'll write it. So I did a lot of documentation, a lot of like help desk stuff. Because again, like there was only a handful of people that actually could like help troubleshoot stuff. So I was just on our Discord. I must have sent, I don't even know how many, thousands and thousands of messages.
Easily.
Mostly in the olden days, but I did a lot of that. I, for a while, was working on like our testing framework. I helped build out the Avalanche network runner, which is like part of our kind of like development toolkit. I worked on some other internal stuff that I can't talk about, and then I've meandered back to working on Avalanche Go. So my favorite parts of the code to work on, I would say, are the networking code. That's always been super fun.
And one question. So it was called Gecko. I want to say, is that correct? What is
originally what became Avalanche Go was Gecko, and then we were like, let's not make this any more confusing than we need to. Although it would have gone well with like the lizard theme for, you know, axolotl.
What is the story behind Gecko? Like why that name? Do you know?
I'm not sure how the lizard theme was settled upon, but I think it might be because originally we were building a Python implementation, and that was going to be Mamba. So like Python Mamba.
Yeah,
so then like maybe it was like we want a different lizard for Go, and like Gecko, Go. I don't know.
Maybe. Okay. Interesting. Well, I must say Avalanche Go is a much more intuitive name because you know, when I first got the source code and trying to build it, I'm like, Gecko? Okay. Must be the node.
It's like, is this some exotic spyware or something? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Good times, man. Awesome. I remember you were also the person that had to, like you said, you had to do a lot of support, lots of problems. And I think eventually, you know, the last thing that I truly spent time on was the dashboards. You sort of put together the analytics and dashboards for people to be able to monitor their own nodes, right? Before all the big node providers supported. Even AWS stuff wasn't working so well. So we had to run some monitoring stuff back then.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. I liked making all the pretty Grafana dashboards and stuff.
Yeah, Yeah, good times. So I remember like the launch day was quite crazy, right? Obviously testnet, if something breaks, I mean, that's the purpose of the testnet. What did it take and what was it like to move from testnet to mainnet? Because that mainnet day was a big day. I remember Discord was blowing up, Telegram was blowing up. We were doing all kinds of memes back then. Like, what was it like? Can you give us a little bit about that?
It was a lot of work, which I don't think will come as a surprise to anyone. At that point we were like in the depths of COVID. This was before like anyone got a vaccine. And so like that whole stretch of time from like I think we launched our first test net like right around the time of COVID, like pretty much right after, if I'm remembering correctly, in March of 2020. Or maybe April. So that whole stretch of time from like March through September, it was like just, crushing through work, which like, what else did I have to do? It's not like I'm going to like go out and see people or stuff. So I got very well acquainted with my chair in my bedroom coom office, and we just kind of grinded through it. At that time we were getting like a lot of really good feedback because we had actually like released the code, and people were actually running it instead of doing everything in isolation, and you catch things so much faster when you have more eyes and more people actually using it.
Totally.
And then that summer, obviously there was a lot of people learning about it through the testnet, through the token sale. It was kind of like a marathon of sprints. But we came out the other side, and then
and it worked.
It worked. Knock on wood. I can never say that and not like cross my fingers and knock on wood and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean the last like couple of weeks were pretty intense, but then came off mostly without a hitch. Like there wasn't any. It didn't like immediately face plant or anything. So yeah, and now I can remember because of the Earth, Wind, and Fire song, because it was September 21st, right?
Exactly, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that release was really, really well done. The only thing that I can remember that was unexpected was the Explorer. I think had some like slowness or performance type thing, which was resolved in a matter of few hours, and it was well staggered and well run. And kudos to you guys. Like we've seen a good number of other releases over the past year or two. And even now, brand new solutions coming to market still have major hiccups from, whether it's the underlying software or whether it's just like the nature of the releases. So all the power to you guys.
And Earth, Wind, and Fire, banger song, banger meme. You know what I mean? So it's good. Like you can't lose.
By the way, Dan, I think we should give you a little bit of time. I'm thinking like we always ask for our guests to give us a song so that Jimmy can play. He usually saves it to the end, and I feel like it would be a scramble. But since you mentioned the song, now is the time to start thinking about it.
Yeah, not putting you on the spot. Firestorm's stealing my thunder. We should call him Thunderstorm over here. But no, but if we play music at the end, if you just think about it, we'll get to it at the end. You know what I mean?
All right, I'll cook something up. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Patrick requested, I think last week it was like Sicko with Flume was the song, and it was really dope. And I wasn't familiar with it, so I always love learning about new music to play. So
it's a lot of power to get to pick the song.
Well, I am the kind of DJ that welcomes requests because I used to be on the radio, and I know the power of somebody who's having a bad day who calls into the radio station and says, "Hey, can you play this song for me?" Because it's kind of a bad time. So I just really like playing requests for people. It's just a personal thing. But
I tried really hard to stump him many times. I've tried like metal. I've tried crazy high beats per minute trance songs. He makes it work. So at this point, I'm just like, dude, whatever song you want, he'll make it work.
Well, it's like I always say, I'm not a crypto triple OG. I'm just a DJ who's excited about Web3 bars. Anyways, let's get back to talking about Dan. Enough about DJ stuff.
Yes. Sorry, we got carried away.
No.
So I mean, like, I guess what would be the feature that you feel the most proud about? Like, there's a lot of things that you guys have built over the course of the 3 years. what is the one thing that, when you retire, you're going to like talk to your grandchildren about that you built or you took part in building?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give like a sort of non-answer because it's not really a feature, but just the fact that the uptime has been almost 100%. That's really hard to do. Like, AWS or whatever aims for like 99.99999% uptime, and we're like, I don't know how many nines come after the first and a 9, but it's a lot. And writing code that doesn't ever stop running it sounds like it should be easy, but actually it's not. No memory leaks, no crash vulnerabilities, no deadlocks, no anything. And like if you're writing a small program, like yeah, sure, it's trivial. But when you're talking, I don't even know how many lines of code are in Avalanche Go now. It must be over 100,000, I imagine. It's tough to do that. So I'm really proud of us that like we've pretty much never stopped processing transactions. As far as like actual features, I think just the architecture of the network is really cool and well designed, and like one of the things that differentiates us from others, like the whole subnet and custom chain thing, is I think a really sweet setup, and maybe you guys agree.
Absolutely. We absolutely agree.
Yeah, and just the whole like VM engine interface where like you can just build your own application that's built like uses a blockchain, but it doesn't actually matter to you, the application creator, what's happening underneath. You don't need to worry about consensus protocols. You don't need to worry about like how the database is getting written to a file. You don't need to worry about whatever. You just like do your thing. You say like what's in a block, what happens when a block is accepted, and then that's mostly it for you.
Would you be open to just like describing the network architecture, given that that's the thing that you're sort of really familiar with, as if like you're explaining it to non-technical folks? Because I know there are some design decisions. For example, I think about Solana and how they do consensus and the way they put the messages on the network. Like what do you view makes Avalanche special?
Sure. So the architecture is, there is kind of a validator set that encompasses everything. That's the primary network. So like when people say they're a validator for Avalanche, they mean that their node is a part of the primary network validator set. And then additionally, you can take subsets of these validators and have them in their own separate like group over here, and that's called the subnet, right? So you just take a bunch of validators from the whole set, right? You take the whole circle and then you draw another circle inside of that, and that's your subnet, a bunch of validators. And then that subnet can validate however many blockchains it feels like. So that could be 0 or it could be more than 1. So there's one subnet that validates each chain, and each subnet can validate many chains. And that's like a really simple but really elegant and nice framework. And I think it has a nice incentive structure with respect to like, because you need to be a validator for the primary network to validate a subnet, it makes it so that people aren't just going to like totally ignore the primary network, which is, I think, a correct alignment of incentives. But then also you can have the space and the freedom to do your own thing with your own subnet. And if you have like special rules about like where the nodes need to be geolocated or hardware requirements or whatever, that's totally up to you.
Effectively, it's the perfect environment for customization, right? Just for reference, Dexalot currently is in a permissioned subnet state where we have our own nodes. We've specifically designed the subset node set such that it's diversified, it's well managed. We don't have to worry about like stake weight and all that stuff. But the framework itself effectively will allow us to go permissionless, open in the future, right? And just to put it into perspective, we as a team decided to go the permission route so that our launch can be done relatively easily. But also think about how Avalabs actually went directly to permissionless, where you can run a node yourself, right? So in that sense, I thought that's also very important for people to remember as well. Like launching a subnet, you can take shortcuts and just have your own nodes. Obviously, every node that we have validate the main network as well, but it's one shortcut we took for the sake of making sure that our solution is very robust from day one. Anyways, were you going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a place for permissioned networks. Like the ability to have permissionless networks is nice, but sometimes it's just not necessary for whatever you're doing, or it's just an expedient to get you from 0 to 1, and then after that you can choose to become permissionless or not.
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, I actually expect once the application specific chain concept truly gets sort of well understood and adopted, I actually think a majority of the application networks out there will be permissioned, right? Because if you think about TradFi, or if you think about other non-blockchain type networks that provide a service to end users, almost all of them are permissioned today. I think all of them becoming permissionless is difficult, and the fact that the subnets allow us to do that is a big differentiator versus an L2, for example, or like another solution that is sort of marketed as equivalent out there. So one question I've heard from folks over the last few years, because they know, like people who knew that I was, trying to do stuff with Avalanche nodes, they always ask me, hey, how would I learn about Avalanche Go? How would I, work at a place like Avalabs? Now that we have you, I think, you're probably the best person to comment on it. If a recent college grad wanted to join the Avalabs team, what are the types of things that you would want to see on their resume?
There's not like any particular, like super specialized or niche or whatever background. You don't need to like have taken a bunch of courses about cryptography. You don't need to have previously worked at an L1 or anything else. I think we use like a pretty similar set of standards and heuristics as other, comparable tech companies. So, the most important stuff is that you have the bread and butter of just writing and reviewing code, just the entire software development lifecycle. So that's the core tenets of computer science, like data structures, algorithms, computational complexity, understanding just like how computers work, like what is a pointer versus not a pointer, just really like all the basic stuff. Do you know how to use concurrency? Do you know how to just all the stuff, there's not like any one specific area. It's just kind of like, are you a good, well-rounded software engineer? Because if you have most of the basic stuff down, then like it's not super difficult to learn about like how does a blockchain work is actually not like crazy difficult to understand if you already understand like what's a digital signature, what's a hash, what are the properties of hashes, et cetera, et cetera. So just like a solid background in software engineering, and then there's the stuff that isn't explicitly computer science, but is part of the software development lifecycle. Like, are you extremely proficient and comfortable using Git? Do you provide good reviews? Do you write clean code? That sort of thing.
Very awesome. Cool. You guys heard it here first. That's all I'm going to say. Avalabs, as far as I can tell, is always hiring. So I kind of wanted to do a plug. Like, it's been a while since we spent some time together, but I remember you distinctly saying, hey, we need people. If you have people, send it over. So I kind of wanted to, put that
Definitely,
plug in
man.
there, if you will, as well.
You heard it here first. We do have a question from the chat really quick. It looks like Shiny Cake. Shout out to Shiny Cakes asking, what's
Shiny
your
Cakes.
motivation to stay focused on how you organize your daily routine to stay as productive as possible?
My motivation to stay focused is, I don't know, like it's just fun to do this stuff. Like I legitimately enjoy the things that I work on, because I like understand the reason that we're doing them, and you know, it's not like this is some directive from some faceless middle manager like 5 layers above me with another 15 layers above them. It's like it's a pretty flat organizational structure, and I have a great deal of insight into like our strategy and how we plan to execute it, and like the features that we're trying to build and why. So I think that's really good for morale and motivation to not just have things kind of thrust upon you. And the stuff is like, you know, usually pretty engaging and fun. Like there's a lot of really interesting problems that we're trying to solve. And I think that's kind of inherently motivating. As far as organization, I wish that I had some like, you know, one of those like Silicon Valley hacks where I like take my calendar and I slice it into
no
like
ice cold showers at 4 a.m., man. None of that stuff. Come on.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I set myself a lot of reminders on Slack, honestly. So I'll be like, don't forget to do this thing. And that's honestly my biggest organizational thing. And then, you know, I've got like a notebook where I write stuff down so I don't forget it, but I don't have any like crazy hacks. I'm afraid to ask what some of them are, because there's all these different things and I don't even know what they are, and I'm too afraid to ask at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it. Like, it's just don't forget that one thing. That's been like the driving strategy of like my motivation for, I think, no matter what job I'm working in, you know what I mean? It's just like, there's one thing that's important for each day. Don't forget the one thing, right? You know what I mean? But I think, Dan, you just kind of summed up why we're all here, because we work in this space because we understand what we're doing. We understand what we want to do, and we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So that's really cool, man. That's really cool to hear.
I mean, my litmus test has been very simple, right? You do something, would you do it again? And would you do it for a long time? And at the end of that, whatever long time is, are you burnt out, or would you want to continue doing it, right? If the answer is yes, 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 that's it, right? Obviously, the most common answer I get actually for a question like this is a to-do list. Exactly as Dan said, I have a to-do list. Mine is probably a bit crazy, but you know, without that, you know, it's a lot more difficult to organize. There's another thing that I saw from Shiny Cakes, by the way. It's further.
Oh yeah, there is a follow-up. Sorry.
No, like before the follow-up, he said something about the private sale was DDoSed, but that private sale was actually on a platform that is not Avalabs run. So I just want to distinguish, because yes, I was extremely frustrated by not being able to access it, just like everybody else was, but that was a third-party platform, which, if I understand correctly, promised that this would never happen. But yeah. Anyways, what's the follow-up question?
Oh, he was just asking if pressure is high. But I feel like I don't know. I'm going to let Dan field this one. This is a Dan question, AMA.
You know, like there's in life and in work, there's some healthy level of stress where like you can't have there be like, you know, you can't always be at 0, because like that's not healthy, and you'll never get anything done, and you'll never go anywhere. And you can't always be at 100, because that's not healthy and sustainable. You kind of want to be like cruising somewhere in between, and there will be times that like, you know, circumstances require that you have to get something done quickly, or, you know, focus especially hard and, you know, kind of like turn it up for a little while. And then there's other times that you can like chill a little bit because, you know, there's no urgency, or, you know, maybe it's like around the holidays and people aren't like going super hard. So I wouldn't say that the pressure is like especially high. I think we have a really good culture, and people are pretty good at finding that like healthy stress and work level.
I think you need both, right? You need to have some degree of pressure so that you, as a person, even when you're not ideally motivated, you still perform and do well.
Yes.
But as Dan said, it needs to be such that if you need to take some time off or you need to do something else for a moment, that's also available, right?
Absolutely.
Like I think looking at the speed with which Avalabs delivers, like I think the balance is probably correct, because we're seeing a lot of features. All of them seem to be, again, knock on wood, cross your fingers, whatever, or are going well. And we're rooting for you guys. We're hoping that you guys are able to maintain that balance as the company grows. How many people are there in Avalabs now? Is it like 500 yet, or?
I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of 200. I don't
Okay.
have the exact number, but somewhere like that.
Still like small to medium. So it's never late to be. It's never too late to be early, guys.
So we got 197 people to go from Avalabs. We're gonna have all you guys on there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to work here, it's pretty easy to find me on Twitter or email or whatever. So hit me up.
Yeah,
definitely, man, definitely.
So I remember at the previous Avalanche Summit, you talked about peer-to-peer messaging and how it works, particularly for Avalanche. For the folks who are going to be at the second summit, which was announced recently, what are you going to talk about? Or are you planning to talk more about this topic?
Yeah, that was a fun presentation. And I was delighted that people actually seemed to be engaged. And I think that speaks well of the audience, because I think in a lot of times and places, if you start to talk about something that technical, people's eyes will glaze over and they'll just start looking at their phones. But people actually were pretty engaged about a pretty in the weeds technical topic.
Right.
So I think maybe this year I will talk about the Merkle database that we've been working on. That's kind of been what I've been focusing on for the last couple months. So that's a really fun project to work on, and I've got at least 30 minutes of stuff that I could say about it. So,
nice.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to present on.
You just got our community marketing lead, Brad McFall, very excited. I just know he's watching this right now going. So yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, for good reason.
Yes,
I was just gonna say, John, who is our producer, if you do get a chance, let's put the link of Dan's presentation from the previous summit, just so that folks can see it again. I think finding that balance about how to make it not uber technical, but also informative about stuff that people just don't know. I think, that's where the conversion holy grail is. That's how you convert people. So
totally.
Let's definitely put it up there.
I think I actually have it. So let me see if I can get it here. I think Brad actually sent it to me earlier. Peer-to-peer messaging. Let's check it out.
This is a Rickroll link.
No.
No. Not for this episode, but maybe
I'm old enough.
You remember
was
what
on
Rickrolling
YouTube a lot in an era where I'm very mistrustful of links on YouTube.
No, we're gonna be showing the footage from Mac and Me, like Paul Rudd does when he goes on.
That's a funny feature, right? Like if somebody misconfigures their node, for example, you can if it's on a UI based operating system, you can open up like a YouTube video where you Rickroll them.
There he is.
there you go.
That's me.
All right, you guys can see him. So there it is.
I've got the Avalanche sweatshirt there and the Avalanche shirt here. So I've got I just need a few other garments and then I'm totally set.
Swag.
You just need a tattoo at this point.
There are people with Avalanche tattoos.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I mean, I saw that Rihanna was kind of sporting the. Stop sharing my screen. Rihanna she had the AVAX red on. You know what I mean? In the Super Bowl halftime show. So that was awesome.
Coincidence?
I think Coop made a meme where she had the actual Avalanche banner and the logos and everything. It's pretty funny. She was full red, right? Red going good. That's what we say. Shout out to Coop.
Definitely, man. Well, Dan, I have two questions, and one we've kind of touched on briefly. Yeah, the Rihanna pick is, we're making a joke, Shiny Cakes. That's not that she didn't really wear an Avalanche suit, but
maybe next year.
Maybe next year. Exactly. So it's going to happen soon. I can feel it. You know what I mean? But I would like to know if you would first of all come back to us and talk about everything that's going on in Avalabs, because when we have these conversations, man, it's so great. Between you and Patrick, it's like we got a super high level look at some very cool stuff that's going on at Avalabs and Avalanche. And it's one of those things where we also got an awesome story about the foundations of Avalanche. You know what I mean? So please, would you come back and talk to us? Like, would that be cool?
Yeah, anytime. You guys know where to find me.
Love that. All right. And then second question, we got to get back to your request. Have you had a chance to think about what you'd like to hear in the mix when we take us out here?
Let's do Use Me by Bill Withers.
Oh my God, bro, let's go.
Can you give me one
That
of
was
those
a great
songs where I can make
obviously
that?
likes it.
I'm a big Bill Withers fan. I have a lot of it. You see a lot of records back here. I have quite a few Bill Withers records. So that's we're going to do Use Me by Bill Withers. Producer John, you do not even need to send me that song. It is in my library. I'm a big fan. So I will drop that for you. Dan Laine, this has been awesome.
Thanks for joining, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, man, and just answering the chat's question. Of course, man. And we'd love to have you back anytime. So maybe closer to the summit or after the summit, we can do a little recap. And you know, maybe we'll Rickroll you that time. I can't promise anything. Okay.
All right. I've got high hopes.
See, we set it up. There'll be a payoff next episode, guys, when Dan's here. Yep. So
yeah.
Exactly. Dan, thanks for being with us. You can follow him on Twitter. We'll have his socials running on the bottom of the screen, Producer John. And Dan, this was a pleasure. I love talking to Avalabs. It's one of those situations where every time someone from Avalabs stops by, we're talking for almost an hour and it feels like 5-10 minutes. You know what I mean? So thank you so much for giving us some insight into your process. And I will never forget the story of going being your advisor and just advising you on Avalabs stuff. That was awesome, man. So thanks again. Cool. And we hope to see you again real soon, man.
All right.
Take care, dude. Great seeing you. Peace.